This morning, Trump declared the U.S.-Iran ceasefire over.
To me, I think it's over.
Oil prices surged towards $79 a barrel. U.S. market futures dropped, and this is the kind of geopolitical shockwave that historically sends investors scrambling for the exits. And right around the same time, one of the most respected macro analysts in the Bitcoin space said something that stopped me in my tracks. That this is the lowest sentiment ever seen on Bitcoin, and this bear market feels worse than 2022, even though the prices are actually higher. And then they said something else. Something that sounds scary until you actually think about it. Absolutely nothing is coming to save Bitcoin. It has to survive on its own merits. This person is 100% correct, and I think that it's actually the most bullish thing anyone has said about Bitcoin all year. Welcome back to Satoshi. Let's get into it. Before I get into it, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it today. It genuinely helps the show reach more people. Now, let's talk about what happened yesterday morning. Trump said,
"Is the ceasefire over? Is the ceasefire done? Is the MOU dead?"
It's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Woodcoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars. We make a deal. And if I make a deal with him, we have a deal. And he goes out, he talks. We make a deal. Everyone's agreed. No nuclear weapon. We make a deal. They go outside, talk to the press. They say, we never even talked about it. There's something wrong with them. They're cuckoo. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
Brent crude immediately surged towards $79 a barrel. U.S. stock futures fell, the kind of headline that triggers a risk-off wave across global markets. This is the type of event that a few years ago would have sent Bitcoin down hard alongside everything else. Crypto was a risk asset, and when markets got scared, Bitcoin got sold. But something different happened today. Bitcoin is still holding above $63,000, whereas last week or the week before, it was at 58K. So let me say that again. Geopolitical tension is spiking, oil is surging, stocks are selling off, and Bitcoin is not following them down, which is not nothing, but when oil spikes, inflation expectations rise. When inflation expectations rise, the case for hard, scarce assets strengthens. Gold has always been the traditional beneficiary of that trade, but gold has a problem. It has borders, it has custodians, it can be confiscated, sanctioned, and frozen. But Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO to sanction. It doesn't have a headquarters to terrorize. It doesn't have a border to close. No government, no matter how hostile, can seize what you hold in your own keys. That is what own merits looks like in real time. When the world gets chaotic, and right now it very much is, Bitcoin's core value proposition doesn't weaken, it strengthens quietly, while everyone is watching the oil price.
I'll tell you one thing that could really change the world. I'm not predicting this is going to happen, okay? It probably won't. But what if, the next Fed meeting came along and Warren said, you know what, we've redefined the inflation numbers. They're backward looking anyway. Things are coming down because the war has been settled. We think there's a lot of AI productivity, and this is a new day at the Fed. We're looking through the numbers, and we believe in, it's really not, we can't backward look, we got to forward look, and we're going to get a lot of productivity, and therefore, we're in a position to cut interest rates, and we're going to cut rates at this meeting. If that happened, okay, just hypothetically, if that were to happen, do you know what would happen to silver and gold and Bitcoin? I mean, they would explode. I mean, not just a little bit, like a lot, because the entire boat is leaning in the, Warsh is a bulker, Warsh is a hawk, higher rates are coming, you don't need any kind of sound money. And, and if he were to reverse and prove that that's not the case, everyone would go, Jesus Christ, these sound money guys were right. They can't ever stop printing. I mean, and that's really, what we're waiting. I mean, how do we win? We win when our money replaces their money, okay? Their money is evil, corrupt, planned by a bunch of central planners, and, and they lie to us 24/7, okay? We win when our money is better than their money and everyone knows it and their money can't exist anymore and everyone walks away from them because we know they're liars. I mean, it's the same way that a lot of people are, currently treating our president. They don't even take him seriously because, he's such a fucking joke. And I'm sure I'll get a lot of Trump, a lot of MAGA people hate on me for that. I just don't give a shit.
Now, I want to talk about Lyn Alden. If you don't know Lyn Alden, she's a very famous macro analyst within our niche, one of the most rigorous, intellectual, honest track records in this space. She doesn't hype, she doesn't speculate. She follows the data, and she's been studying Bitcoin through multiple cycles. And this week she said,
I've seen way weaker sentiment this bear market than the 2022 bear
yeah,
market. We were at Pacific Bitcoin in 2022,
yeah,
and energy there was high. I mean,
yeah.
Bitcoin was crashing to like 16,000. Energy was still very high. I think the combination of the broader crypto space, like truly running out of like good narratives, or at least like temporary narratives that hit in some way, combined with that this wasn't a very retail heavy cycle, it was more of a corporate cycle. And then kind of the fact that Bitcoin just didn't reach the highs that many people thought is just disappointing for a lot of people. So this is the lowest sentiment that I've personally seen on Bitcoin.
I want to think about that for a second because I know how it sounds. I know it sounds like confirmation that something is broken, that maybe the skeptics were right all along. But here's what I know from experiencing 2 cycles, and this is just a gut feeling. This feels like it might be the bottom because Bitcoin is based on math, based on computers, and we are human. This hopelessness is telling me that maybe things are about to start turning up. I could be completely wrong. We might actually see the high 40s, but I don't know. In late 2018, at the absolute bottom of the cycle, the headlines were the same. Bitcoin is dead, the experiment failed, even the believers were exhausted. And then, without an announcement, without a catalyst, without anyone ringing a bell, it started to recover. In mid-2022, the same thing happened. FTX had just imploded, Celsius had collapsed, Three Arrows was gone, and that was the bottom. The pattern isn't that recovery happens when everyone gets confident again. It actually happens when everybody in the space has run out of hope. And this isn't necessarily a reason to panic, but it is a reason to pay very close attention. And if you're still here and you're paying close attention, you are the exact kind of person who should be thinking about self-custody right now. Because the people who come out of this cycle the strongest won't be the ones who time the price. They'll be the ones who actually own their Bitcoin. The Bitcoin Way helps you get there. Free 30-minute consultation at thebitcoinway.com/simply. Tell them Satoshi sent you. Now, here's the line that I keep coming back to. Lyn Alden said,
I don't think there's anything coming to save Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has to kind of either its merits are going to be seen by the market, and it's going to be bought, by players in the market, and they're going to take advantage of, cheap sats and a lot of the fast money washed out, and a lot of the parts of the ecosystem deleveraged, and then it'll climb its way up. And then once it starts climbing its way up, that of course gets outside money interested again. That's what makes it become fast money. If something's bottomed and rolling up, you get again the technical chartists that come in and say that's actually a pretty good chart. You get the momentum traders, you get the FOMO traders, and you get all the marketing around Bitcoin one day reclaiming 100K and then reclaiming all-time highs, and it just kind of feeds on itself. And until then, I think the asset just has to survive on its own merits.
she said Bitcoin must rely on real buyers who see value in cheap sats. Once the price starts recovering, outside money from Wall Street and big institutions could return and help fuel the next leg. But until then, Bitcoin is kind of on its own with its OG, plebs, and hodlers. And I want to actually kind of reframe that because nothing is coming to save Bitcoin sounds like a warning, but listen to what it actually means. It means that the ETF tourists are gone, but if they're smart, they'll come back. The institutional FOMO buyers are gone. And again, if they're smart, they'll come back. And the number go up crowd is gone. And all of those people are going to learn from this. This is going to be their first cycle, and they're going to be paying their dues. They're going to feel the pain. The people who came because their financial advisor mentioned it, and the people who bought because their brother-in-law wouldn't stop talking about it at Thanksgiving, they've left the station. So what's left? The people who actually understand what they're holding. And the people who lost out on that opportunity become new believers. They start to go down the rabbit hole that all of us went through a cycle or two ago. And here's the data point that proves it. While ETFs bled $4 billion over the past few weeks, whales actually quietly accumulated 270,000 Bitcoin, which is worth $16.7 billion in 2 weeks. Those are the buyers that Lyn Alden is referring to, the real buyers, the ones that are seeing value in cheap sats, the ones who don't need a narrative or a catalyst or a CNBC headline to tell them what they already know. Every single durable bull run in Bitcoin's history was built on this exact foundation, accumulating at prices that nobody else wanted. Which is crazy to me because Bitcoin is literally on a discount right now. The 2013 run, the 2017 run, the 2020 run, all they had to do is look in the past and they all looked exactly like this before they didn't. Nothing is coming to save Bitcoin is just the other side of a sentence that ends with, because Bitcoin is already saving itself.
When you buy into a network that's going to get adopted by everybody, the returns are just insane. And, my opinion is that Bitcoin is the monetary network of the future. And even though today it's still kind of stumbling along and not that many people have adopted it, it ultimately will be adopted by everybody. And when it is, guess what? These are 5 million a coin or more. So, because there's a fixed supply. I mean, the other thing is we all talk about, it, but other people don't understand is we've never really had anything in the world that was this scarce. The fixed supply of every other commodity, even every other stock. I mean, they can issue more stock, but they're 21 million of these things. And so, that it kind of breaks the human brain because as, Giovanni, who's on X/Twitter, does a great job of talking about the human brain just doesn't really understand exponentials that well. And so, I mean, Bitcoin is 10x a number of times. It went from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 100,000. Well, guess what's next? It's going from 100 to a million. Then it's going from 1 million to 10 million. Now, each of those 10x, each of those, orders of magnitude took longer, and that's okay because, and as you would expect, as it seeps out and gets more widely adopted, it becomes less volatile. But, until I see evidence that adoption is slowing, I don't see any of that. Until I see evidence that adoption is slowing, I just want to stay parked on this train because I just know where it's going.
Let me put this picture together. There's geopolitical tension spiking, oil surging, markets are falling, and Bitcoin holds. That's not a risk asset behaving badly. It's actually a hard asset starting to behave like one. The most respected analyst in the space saying sentiment is the lowest she's ever seen really just means that all the non-believers are being shaken out. And that's historically the most reliable bottom signal that we have. 270,000 Bitcoin accumulated by whales in 2 weeks. The real buyers Lyn Alden is talking about, they're already here. They're already buying. These 3 things are not a coincidence. They're actually a convergence. The bear market has done exactly what bear markets are supposed to do. It's gotten rid of the tourists and it's tested the conviction of everybody who is still here. It's stripped away every narrative, every hype cycle, every shortcut. And this is what we mean by proof of work. What's left of Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, it's doing what it has always done. Surviving. And if you're one of the buyers that I'm talking about, this is the infrastructure for that. Bitcoin Well, non-custodial by design, every purchase goes straight to your own wallet, no IOUs, 50,000 plus users, publicly traded in Canada, daily recurring buys, and right now 3 chances to win 1 million sats just by using the link bitcoinwell.com/simplybtc.
Remember, the people in power, the people that run the government, their major goal is to keep themselves in power and to keep the system running. They don't care about inflation. They say they do, but they don't. And they lie to us about that. And we know that if and when, the sharp end of the stick comes for them, they're going to print the money to keep things going. And so, that's that. And that, I know that, Bitcoiners know that, gold and silver bugs know that. Sadly, we're less than 5% of America, and the rest of America has to learn that. And, they will in time, I think.
I want to be honest about something. Nobody came to save my generation either. We were handed a housing market that we couldn't afford, a dollar that bought less and less every year, and a government that printed money into oblivion. There was no Calvary, no policy that fixed it, no politician who made the math work for us. Bitcoin didn't come with a savior. It came with 21 million fixed, a number that doesn't negotiate with inflation, that doesn't answer to any government, and doesn't care what's happening in the Middle East or anywhere else for that matter. When they say that Bitcoin has to survive on its own merits, I hear something actually really personal in that, because so did we. My generation figured out pretty quickly that the system wasn't going to fix itself for us. The people who thrived were the ones who stopped waiting to be rescued and started building something different. That's what Bitcoin is. And a lot of people think it's a get-rich-quick scheme, but it's not. It's a different kind of money, one that survives on its own merits because it was designed to. The Iran news is scary. The low sentiment is very real. The silence in the Bitcoin community right now is super uncomfortable. But Bitcoin is still here, still above 63,000, still being accumulated by people who know. And that's enough for me. And if you want to be in the room with the people building through all of this, you need to go to Mining Disrupt. July 21st through the 23rd in Miami, the world's largest Bitcoin mining conference. Nico and the whole Simply Bitcoin team will be there. Use code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off at miningdisrupt.com. Lyn Alden is right about one thing. Nobody's coming to save Bitcoin, but that's because it's never needed saving. It just needs you to understand why you're here and to not let a news cycle talk you out of what you know to be true. Thanks for watching Simply Bitcoin Satoshi. Don't forget to smash the like button, share the show with your friends, drop a comment below. I read all of them. Follow me on X at InternetSophie, and as always, stack, slay, and stay bullish, baby.